Today, we've got a great topic. Today, we're going to talk about the worst questions to ask a customer. These are questions that put people on the defensive, they make people fearful, and they hurt us in our sales process. As those of you who have been with me regularly, you know how I feel about the sales process. I believe the sales process has to be fluid. I believe it has to lower people's defensive posture. I believe that it has to create an environment where people want to do business with us. And the last thing we want to do is put people's defensive postures up. That's really, really, really important. We tend to do that and we don't realize we're doing that. And that's where it hurts us. It's the old school mentality that some of us have, derived over the years that have been handed down and handed down. Folks, keep this in mind. You've heard this 1,000 times. If you keep doing the same things over and over again, but expect different results, that's the definition of insanity. If you want to sell more cars, if you want to make more money, you have to make changes. You can't keep doing the same thing. Unfortunately, we have a tendency to teach a sales process that is designed to sell 8, 10, 12 cars a month. Do some of us succeed and sell more? Of course we do. But on average, that's what the average salesperson sells. So if you see me keep looking to the left, that's because I'm looking at my sheet here. I made a list of all the questions. When I started doing my research on this, I thought maybe I'd have 10, 12 questions. And I got to tell you, it's boiled into a lot more. So I'm going to start going through them here. And again, these are questions that you shouldn't ask a customer. And you've always got to put yourself in the customer's shoes. So let's start with the meet and greet. And I see this happening all the time. We walk out to the customer and the first words are, "Hi, how can I help you? How can I help you? What brings you into the dealership today?" You're setting yourself up for failure and you're setting yourself up for obstacles that are difficult to overcome. Oh, and by the way, just to interject here, if you've got questions, type in your questions as we go through the program this morning so that you're ready so that we get to the end. I know some of you, it gets late and then you can't get your questions in. So you can type them in and I'll get to them all at the end. So when you ask somebody, what brings you in today? How can I help you? It sets you up to get, is it okay if I walk around by myself? It sets you up to get, we're just looking. It's our first time. We just started our shopping process. Or I only have 15 minutes. When you start your meet and greet, you always want to be in control. Don't let the customer ever take control of the process. When I do my meet and greet, I say, "Hi, welcome to the dealership. My name is David Lewis, and you are Mr. or Miss or Mrs. I want them engaged with questions that I know they'll answer for me. Hi, welcome to the dealership. My name is David, and you are Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, welcome to the dealership. It's very nice to have you here today. Have you been here before? No, we haven't. It's our first time. Fantastic. Welcome again to the dealership. So are you guys looking today for a new or used car? I'm taking control by asking, how can I help you? What brings you in today? You're opening up a Pandora's box. Now comes the big set of questions that just bother me. I mean, they just make no logical sense. And that's in our qualification step. So for example, I would never, and I mean never, ask a customer, "What is your budget?" Now, I know it makes logical sense on the surface, but it does not make logical sense for the sales process. Remember, we always have said buyers are liars. Don't ever ask a customer a question that can result in an answer you don't want to hear. Don't ever ask a question that can result in a lie. Folks, understand something. If my budget was $500, I would tell you $400 or $350. And what does that do? It sets you up for failure because now you're going to show me cars in that $350 budget. And then you wonder why at the end I say to you, "I want to go home and think about it." I'm not going home to think about it. You just didn't show me the car I wanted to see because I lied to you about my budget. Now, I know a lot of you are saying, "Well, how do I get them? What if they pick the wrong car?" That could happen. We've always talked about that could absolutely happen. But you know what? We've talked about this in the past. The number one goal you have is to find a car the customer loves. If the customer finds a car they love that's a few dollars more, so be it. They'll figure out a way to buy it. But when you ask, "What is your budget?" you're setting yourself up for failure. How about this one? Do you have a trade? Now, I know this bucks every piece of conventional wisdom. Why do you need to know if a customer has a trade? It's going to create an obstacle for you. And it's an obstacle you don't want to have because here's what's going to happen. A lot of you, when the customer says yes, "Well, how much do you think your trade's worth? Do you owe any money on your trade? Who have you financed the vehicle with?" You're going down a path that you don't need to go down. And it's making your customers, again, more defensive. And they're going to lie to you. And they're thinking, why does he or she need to know these questions? Why are they asking these questions? It doesn't make sense. You know when I want to know if the customer has a trade? When I'm sitting at my desk 2 hours later. Because you know why? I've accomplished my first 3 goals. I found a car they love. They like me and they want to do business at the dealership. By bringing that up early, it creates problems I don't want to have. Now, I know, again, a lot of you are saying, well, what if the customer owes $4,000 more than their trade's worth? So be it. Have you ever sold a car to a customer that was buried in their trade? Of course you have. It happens all the time. But you know what? If you know this right up front, it's going to create psychological warfare in your head. It would with me. It's got to with most people. That's why I don't want to know, because I know if they fall in love with something, I'm going to sell them something. I would never ask anybody, are you paying cash or financing? It really doesn't matter. To some people, that's threatening. Oh, is that going to change what you show me? Is that going to change my pricing? You don't need to know that. How is your credit score? Now, I know a lot of dealerships like to run credit on people beforehand. That's a decision you make as a dealership. And I accept it and I understand it. I don't really care. I don't care. How much are you putting down? I would never ask that question. Again, it's immaterial to me. Oh, how about this one? You want to really, really turn somebody off? Is when you ask this question. Is there anybody else involved in the buying decision? Especially to a female. Oh my goodness gracious. I would never, ever, even to a male. Listen, if a female came in by herself and she had to talk to her husband anyways, or a male came in and had to talk to his wife, if you knew that, would that change your presentation and demonstration? It shouldn't. Actually, if I knew that somebody was coming in and they had to go home and share it with their spouse, I'd try even harder to get them to fall in love with those three things. A car, me, and the dealership. It's so important. I would never ask, what else are you looking at? I mean, that's a comment. What else? What are you comparing this to? What else are you looking at? Why do you need to know that? That's not material. I'd lie to you. I would say, well, I'm looking at this, this, and this. Try to catch you off guard. It doesn't make sense to me. Or if they tell you up front they have a limited time period, and then you ask, what is your timeline? Because that's going to send you in a bad direction as well. Because now what happens when somebody says 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you know what you're going to do? You're either going to rush or you're going to cut out steps in the process, and you're never going to sell the car. It's never going to happen. If somebody says to me up front, well, I have a limited time, I would say, great. I'll tell you what, I'll let you control the clock. Just give me 5 minutes notice before you need to leave so I can gather up some information that you might want to take home with you. See, people bring that up because they're scared and defensive, and they want to have an exit strategy that if you push them and pressure them, they can leave. So if you don't push and pressure them, won't leave and they'll stay as long as they can. Okay, so now we've gone from the qualification step. Now let's go into the selection process. So I have one real big one here in the selection process, and this has to do with locates. It has to do with color choices and options. When somebody says, I don't see a color I like, and you ask, what color did you have in mind? And now they pick a color that you don't have. And then you follow that question up with, well, what would be your second choice? That's exactly what happened in my situation with one of my kids. We went to buy a car, and she wanted white. I mean, that's what she wanted. And they didn't have one in white. And she brought that up, and the salesperson said, well, what's your second color choice? And my daughter said, like a light color, like light gray. Yeah, like light gray. So we spent the next hour and a half demoing, driving the light gray. And then at the end, we said we want to go home and think about it. And we got in the car, and she said, Dad, I don't want a light gray car. And I said, you don't have to buy a light gray car. We'll go somewhere else and get a white car. Okay, so that I would never ask that question. Now, as we move along, I don't ask people, would you like to take a demo drive? Especially if I'm standing outside the car. That is a pure opportunity for a customer to say no. How would I do it? Real simple. As the customer's walking around the lot, once they see a set of cars they like, they're going to gravitate to those cars. I'm real big on letting people have their space. When I mean space, I mean 10, 15 feet. I'm not leaving them alone. And once they gravitate to a set of cars, and I see them looking at the same ones over and over again, I ask, would you like to sit in one of those cars so you can see what the interior is like? See, a lot of you jump right for the demo ride. It makes people scared and defensive because they know the demo ride is where the commitment's going to start to take place. And they know their emotions are going to take over. So what I do is would you like to sit in one of the cars? And when they say yes, I say, great, which one did you like the best? The white one. Okay, let me get the keys. Now I get them in the car, get the car started, pull it out, get them in the car. I actually do a presentation inside the car. Now I know with COVID, we're not doing all of that, but look, we've got to think past COVID right now because we see the light at the end of this tunnel. And now when they're in the car and they're sitting in the car and the air is flowing and the music's on and they're comfortable in the seat and I've presented everything to them, then I ask, would you like to take the car for a drive? But never, ever, ever prior to sitting in that car, you are going to get too many people that say no. And how about when you're on the drive? These are questions that I heard years ago that are still being taught. They're little trial closes, little tidbits we throw at people. So who's the first person you're going to show your new car to? Where's the first place you're going to take a trip in your new car? People know what you're doing. They understand this. When you're on that demo ride, it should be casual conversation, casual dialogue. I've told you before, little children should be seen and not heard. Well, on the demo ride, a salesperson should be silent until he or she is spoken to. Let the customer control the conversation. If not, and you're asking questions, you're going to make them defensive. Don't ask me personal questions. What do I do for work? Where do I live? Where do I go to school? Or where do my kids go to school? You're not going to, I know what you're trying to do, but here's what's going to happen. If you just be silent, I might ask you the questions and then you can reiterate and ask the questions back. So I might say to you, hey, how long have you worked at the dealership? And you say, oh, I've been here for 4 years. Then you could say, great. What kind of work do you do, Mr. Lewis? I say, oh, I'm a sales trainer. You know, and I might say, do you live in the area? Oh, I live over on the west side of town. Where do you live, Mr.? Oh, I live on the east side of town. So let the customers control the dialogue. If you don't, then they're going to get defensive. Now, this brings us up to another really big problem I have. And a lot of you write to me all the time, and I understand and I get it. I get the way you've been trained. And all I'm trying to do is make you think. And now these questions relate to the trial closes we do. We've done a great job so far. So we haven't asked any threatening questions up front. No threatening questions on the qualification, the meet and greet, the demo ride. Everything's going smoothly. We've got the customer who came in like this, and now they're down here. They found a car they love. We drove it for 30 minutes. We had great dialogue. Their defensive posture is down. And now, at the end of the demo ride, after we've done a walk around, we hit them with this question. So, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, if we can come together on terms and numbers, would you buy the car today? And now you took this relaxed person and you brought them all the way back up here. Now think about this for a second. If I said to you, yes, I would buy the car today, that's exactly what you wanted to hear. And that's a great answer. But you know what? If you had waited 10 minutes after your service walk and when you're sitting at the desk and you presented the numbers to me and then asked me would I want to buy the car, you'll still get the same end result. But what about those that say no? What happens when the customer says, no, I'm not buying the car today? So now you get defensive. Now you as the salesperson, I know I would. Now we get defensive. But we might repeat it. So you're telling me that if I gave you a fantastic price on this car, you would not buy it today. Well, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to defend my no, and I'm going to say no again. Well, did you not like the car? And now I'm going to get defensive again. No, I did like the car. Is it me? No, it's not you. And now we have two entities that are frustrated. Okay. I'm frustrated as the customer because now you're asking me questions and you're not accepting my answer. Okay. You as the salesperson, you opened up this box, not me. Okay. Now you as a salesperson, you're getting frustrated. And why are you getting frustrated? Because I'm not giving you the answers you want to hear. And what's worse is you know that in about 5 minutes, you're going to have to deal with your sales manager. And now you're going to have frustration there too. Why do you need to ask these questions? You've been with me for 2 hours, an hour and a half. Don't you think you know whether I like the car or not? What does it matter? Are you going to switch cars and start all over again? Well, that's one of the thought processes. Well, maybe we're on the wrong car. Well, maybe we are. But you know what? I've been here for 2 hours. I'm tired. I'm frustrated. I want to go home. I'm hungry. I'm snack. I mean, so why? I don't get it. How about this question? So on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, how would you rank the car? Oh, now I got to give you an assessment of what I think. I'd like to know this. If somebody would like to do a survey for me, ask that question to 100 people. And how many of those 100 people say, oh, it's a 10? I'm only going to guess at that. I can't think it being that many. I would venture to think that most people would say a 7. I mean, we don't want to insult you. And then we follow up with another threatening question. Well, what would it take to make it a 10? Now, my sarcastic humor, I'd say, well, I'll tell you what, you drop $10,000 in cash in the trunk and you got yourself a 10. Why are you putting the customer on the spot? And you wonder why, when you get to the negotiations, this gets so difficult. It gets difficult because you set this situation up. You set it up. Okay, let me change my sheet here. We got more. There's still more of these threatening questions. So now we're going to get into the negotiations. So now, let's say we haven't asked any of these threatening questions. Everything's going smoothly. No meet and greet questions that caught them off guard. No qualification questions. They found the car they love. We had a great demo ride. We did a service walk. We're sitting down. And now we're ready to negotiate. And you know what? The negotiations don't go as planned. You present your numbers, and now the customer objects. Well, here's the sad part about this, folks. And I'm sorry to say this, but the truth is the truth. Most of us have never been trained how to overcome an objection. We're clueless. And the worst part of all is there's only 3 objections you get on regularity: a price or payment objection, a trade objection, or I want to go home and think about it. We know why you get I want to go home and think about it is because 9 out of 10 times you did a lousy presentation and demonstration. They didn't find the car they loved. They didn't like you, or they didn't want to do business at that dealership. So we don't know how to overcome an objection. So what do? We make it everything about the money. It's all about the money. Okay. So people are trained to do this, to make it, the customer's trained. They've been doing this for so long. So now we present the numbers, and the customer says no. And they say the payment's too high. So they say the payment's too high. So what do we ask? Here's the most ridiculous question in the world. What payment did you have in mind? Okay, great. I love it. Give me, the customer, all the control. Now I have everything in my favor. So you came out with a payment of $500. I said, no, the payment's too high. You asked me, well, what payment did you have in mind? And I said to you, I don't know. I was thinking I wanted to be more around $375. So now you're working off of my number. And my number isn't a profitable number for you. So now what you got to do is you're going to get into a grind. You're going to grind out a car deal. And as a salesperson, for you salespeople out there, you don't have to grind just me. You got to grind your manager. You're working double hard. You got to convince me, and you got to convince your manager. This is not fun. I mean, this is not fun. But how about this? Let's take it a step further. So now we've been trained. Customer says, what payment did you have in mind? I say $375. And then you say, up to? And then I go, oh, I don't know, $390. You say, okay, not to exceed, $395. And this becomes a silly game. And you got to understand, people know what we're doing, and they're prepared to do this. And the worst part of all is that everybody does the same thing. So if I'm going to 2 or 3 dealerships, I'm hearing the same presentation over and over and over again. And we question why the average salesperson sells 8, 10, 12 cars a month. How about these questions? So what would it take to put a deal together today? I love it when a salesperson says that to me, because I'll tell you what it's going to take to put a deal together today. And then I'll leave. And I'll tell you what, every time you get into these conversations and you ask these questions, I can guarantee you one thing with 100% accuracy. If you sell this customer a car today, you are not going to make any money. You are not. You are not. And don't be mad at yourself. This is the direction you drove the customer down. This is the path that you decided was best by the series of questions you asked. I could take anybody down any path I want to take them. Why would I take them down that path? And then how about this one? So, what's more important to you, price or quality? Now I got to make a decision. Or then you ask this one, is it me, the car, or the dealership? Now I got to decide. You really think I'm going to tell you it's you? I don't like you. I'm not going to tell you that. Do you think I'm going to tell you your dealership sucks? I'm not going to tell you that. Am I going to tell you I don't like the car? All you're doing is backing me into a corner again. And now I got to defend myself. And now I'm going to say, well, you're the first place we've been to. And we still want to go look at this, this, and this. Folks, let's start wrapping this up. I got one more I want to share with you that's has to do with an inbound phone call. But I want to repeat myself. You're in control. You dictate the direction of the process. Don't let the customer do that. By you asking certain questions and not asking certain questions, it will define how your presentation and demonstration goes. Listen to this. I believe wholeheartedly that if you do the right job, when you present your numbers and ask for the sale, some people will just say yes, if you do it properly. But I also believe that most people will object. It's their nature. It's the way they've been trained over the years. They know that the car dealership is a place they can negotiate. So listen very carefully to what I'm going to share with you, because this is so important. The better the presentation, the better the objection. The better the objection, the easier it is to overcome. And what I'm saying to you is this: you make an awesome presentation, you're going to get easier objections. You're going to get ones that aren't hardcore that then become easy to overcome. And that's how you're going to sell cars. I'm going to leave you with one last one, then I'll open it up for questions. And that is this. And the only reason why I added this to my list is because I got a call today. I got a solicitation call. I knew it was a solicitation call coming in. I could see the caller ID. I am a vendor. I can't be rude to another vendor, okay? Because I don't know if that vendor might need my services or want my services. So I'm always very polite. And this vendor called and I answered the phone and he said, David, and I said, yes. And the first words out of his mouth is, do you have a few minutes? And I said, no. Now, I had all morning, but he asked the question and I said no. And he said, okay, I'll call you another time. And I said, okay, great, thanks, goodbye. So when you call your customers, whether it be for a follow-up after a sale or a follow-up to get a sale or be a BDC leader, don't ever ask them, is this a good time? Are you free to chat? Just start talking. If they are truly in a situation where they can't talk, they will let you know that. And they will say, I can't talk right now. So with that said, I have now shared with you all the questions. Now I'm sure there's more. So let's look here and up here my thing. So now if you have any questions, please get your questions prepared. Real quickly before we I answer any questions, I just always like to ask you guys how I did today. So if you could, and I'm looking up on my big board here to see how you all answered. So how did I do? What did you think of today's session? Fantastic, great, oh, very kind. Okay. I mean, this means a lot to me. So I do take this very, very seriously. As we're doing that, let me share with you, there will be no Live with David Lewis for the next 2 weeks. Obviously, we have the holidays and then we have New Year's. So we will be right back after that. Okay, I'm going to close this out. Thank you all very much. I appreciate those kind comments. Okay, now does anybody have any questions? Let me open up my questions here. Thank you, Roger. Roger says, awesome class. Okay, TJ, what are you asking? My manager wants to know if they'll buy the car today before. Okay. So TJ's asking me, what are you doing? I'm assuming is what he's asking. He wants to know how does he handle it when his managers always want to know, are they buying the car today? And for you managers there, I don't ask that question. That is a manager question I would never ask because it creates frustration. And here's the problem. If the salesperson says no, it takes our negotiations in one direction. Now the manager doesn't want to give numbers. I don't understand why. I don't understand. You see, me personally, and I know I'll get some of my sales managers upset with me, but I've got to motivate my customers to buy, and I got to motivate my managers to manage. So if a manager asks me, are they buying a car today? My comment will be absolutely. I can't see why they would not. Okay, let's go positive. Let's always go positive. Okay, let me see what else I got here. Okay, Greg, why would you not want to know up front if the customer has a trade? Okay, Greg, that's a great question. I handled that earlier. I don't know if you came into the session late. I don't care. I really don't care if they have a trade. It's immaterial to me. And I know, again, I'm repeating myself. A lot of you are concerned that the customer's buried in their trade. It's going to happen. But you know what? I believe in psychological warfare because I know it happens to me. It happens to me all the time. You know, it was always funny. Years ago when I was an F&I manager, we're going back 40 years ago, 35 years ago, and a salesperson would come into me and he'd say, you're not going to sell these people anything. That's reverse psychological warfare. Okay. But it did get to me. It did get to me. You know, I have a psychological thing I can't deal with. I'll tell you exactly what it is. And you're all going to laugh when I share with you this. There is one customer I don't want to take. I mean, I'll talk to anybody. There's one customer I don't want to take. And it's that person who gets out of their car, walks up, and we're all standing outside, and he says, "Who's the lucky one that wants to sell a car today?" Okay. Oh, geez, Bob, it's your turn. You're next. Okay. Psychologically, that gets to me. Now, might Bob sell them a car? Yeah, and I'm going to feel like crap. That's why I don't want to know what they have for trade. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. When they love the car, they love me, they love the dealership. Now we're going to sit down, we're going to negotiate. Now, do they have a trade? That becomes a critical thing. Okay. Ray wants to know, after the demo drive, how would you get the customer from the car to the showroom? Okay. It's actually from Matt. Okay. So real simple. First of all, you're missing a big step here. My progression is from the demo drive to an external walk around. Okay. From the external walk around, it is to the service walk. You've got to do a service walk. That is critical. Remember, they buy a car from a person at a dealership. You have to spend that 4 or 5 minutes walking them through service. Even if it's just, here's what we do, here's how it works, here's how this, it's something. So how do I get them there? It's real simple. And it works 99.9% of the time. Get back on the demo ride. I do my walk around. And then I say, folks, before we go inside, I have something that we're very proud of here. I'd like to show you real quickly. And I turn and start walking away. I've never not had anybody follow me. Never. Now, is it going to happen to somebody someday? Of course, everything happens to somebody someday. So that is how I get them into the service walk. And then as we walk through the service, then I bring them into the showroom and I sit them down. If you can't get them into your showroom, it means A, you've lost control, okay? Or B, you've got them so scared of you that they're petrified to come inside. That's why I don't believe in these threatening questions, which keep going on, going on, going on. Okay. Daryl says, why do we make numbers the problem? The customer already knows why, so why old school guys make it difficult for the salesperson. I don't know if I understand your question, Daryl. Why do we make numbers the problem? I don't know why we would ever make numbers the problem. I mean, the numbers are the numbers, okay? The only, let me tell you something, okay? There's an old saying, and it says, gross is a state of mind. And when that statement was created, and I hear it all the time, we always talk about the salesperson, that gross is a state of mind to the salesperson. Well, I'm going to add one thing to this, and I don't want you to ever forget this. Gross is also a state of mind in the customer. The payment is also a state of mind in the customer. Again, when you make a bad presentation, a bad demonstration, the selling price becomes a big issue. It's a huge issue, and it's an easy way for them to leave. I don't make it a big issue because I make a great presentation, a great demo. I don't let that get to my head. I'm not afraid to present numbers. I'm not afraid to ask for the sale, but I'm also very skilled at overcoming objections. And, when it comes to payment, I've shared this with you before. I always use my restaurant analogy, and I'll use it with you, and you can interpret it to use as a customer. All of you have gone out for dinner at one time or another, some more than others. And when you go out for dinner, and let's just say the meal is $100, you're going to leave a tip. How much do you leave? If you're a good tipper, you're going to leave 20 or 25%. So let's say 20%. Now that's $20. You didn't think twice about it. And you're going to go out for dinner more than once a month for most people. So why are you thinking twice about it in the purchase of your car? And again, I'm going to tell you why people do that. Because one of those three elements weren't completed. They're not 100% on the car. They're not 100% on you. They're not 100% on the dealership. Now, again, is there always somebody who's going to grind you, even if they love all those things? Yes, that's always going to happen. Okay, Daryl, he's sending me back again. Old school guys with old school mentality. Customer already knows. Yeah. Old school mentality, though, the problem with the old school mentality is it's not going away. And here's the reason why it's not going away. And it's logical. When I started selling cars in 1979, I was taught an old school mentality. When I became a manager, I taught an old school mentality. When my salespeople became managers, they taught an old school mentality. And that mentality kept going down and down and down and down and down. And at some point, we are getting certain salespeople and certain dealerships that are getting away from that old school mentality. I know I sound like a broken record. I know it. Find a car they love, get them to love you, get them to love the dealership. Okay, let me look at one or two more questions here. Okay, Mel, when should we ask Okay. All right, I get it. He wants to know, when is the right time to ask how much they owe on their trade? Okay. At the negotiations, when you're presenting the number, before you present the numbers. This is when you're sitting down at your desk. You're saying, folks, do you have a trade? Yes, great. What do you have? Blah, 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 blah. Do you owe any money on that trade? That's what I want to know. Again, I'm going to emphasize, don't get frustrated when the customer now is buried in that trade, because you have people that will get them out of that deal. You've all had customers come in that are buried in trades, and you've all sold them cars and delivered cars. So don't let that get to you in any way, shape, or form. All right, one more. Elsie, I'd like to know what other cars my customers are looking for, so I know my competition. Okay, Elsie, you don't want to know your competition. Okay, for two reasons. Number one, I might not be telling you the truth. I very well might be talking. I'm defensive. And number two, I don't want you downselling somebody else's product. It's not a good way to sell your product. Sell me your value. Don't downsell somebody else's value. And don't tell me that you've got something here we can go side by side. We have a used one of those or a used one of these. I'm a broken record. Forget about where they've shopped. Forget about their timeline. Forget about all. Find a car they love. Remember, NADA says year after year that 70% of the people that come into a car dealership buy a car different than what they set out to initially buy. Now, that could be a different color, could be different options, it could be different model and make. Who knows what it is? Find a car they love. It's going to be so much easier.
Thank you for watching my video, and I hope I inspired you. If you enjoyed the content, please like, share, and click the subscribe button. Once you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell so you can receive more content like this every week. And should you have any comments or questions, I'd love to hear them.